Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15, going on 16 novels of suspense. My current novel is one wrong word, cleverly displayed on the door behind me, because, of course, that's where you put your books. And my new book, book 16, is called All This Could Be Yours, and you will hear about that when the time comes. But today we are here to talk about this absolutely terrific book, The Final Act of Juliette Willoughby, which I just raced through, you all. It is clever and chic and smart and intelligent and knowledgeable and absolutely surprising. It's just a banger of a mystery. Am I allowed to say that? It has all the trappings and all of the glorious external factors, but in the core of it is really a terrific mystery. And I love how Ellery Lloyd, and we'll talk to Paul and Collette in a second, how Ellery Lloyd have managed to make us feel incredibly smart, like we have learned something about the art world as we're devouring this mystery, and also turning the pages as fast as we possibly can to not miss this book. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Sherry Steuben is here, and Kim Rudder is here. Sharon Bishop says howdy do to all of you. Deborah Press and Emily is here saying hello. Hey, Kim Rudder. Hello, book friends. It is so nice to welcome you all here to A Mighty Blaze on Crime Time. We're loving this. And today I am so pleased to introduce you to Ellery Lloyd, who, as you can see, is two people. Ellery Lloyd is the pseudonym for London-based husband and wife writing team of Collette Lyons and Paul Vlitos, coming to us from their living room in London. How elegant is that? Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Lovely to meet you.
Hi, everyone.
It's so nice that you are in the screen together. I can't imagine what it's like to write books together. Can you tell us a little bit about when you started doing that? And congratulations on this one as well. It is an absolute triumph.
Thank you.
So this is actually our third novel.
Well, we should start by saying we're a married couple.
We're a married couple, yes, exactly.
We were married before we started writing together.
Yeah, we've been married about 15 years, and I think it's 15 years, something like that. We both come from writing backgrounds. So my background is journalism, and Paul is professor of creative writing at Greenwich University. So words are kind of our thing. And I was made redundant when I was pregnant with our 6-year-old daughter. And after she was born, we started talking about the plot for a novel. It gave us something to do, and basically.
What I would say is you've always had brilliant plot ideas, which you've never got around to writing, which was quite frustrating. And then we had this kid and we realized, wow, why don't we actually do it together?
Yeah. And so our first novel, People Like Her, was set in the world of parent influencers, mummy influencers. So we came up with a kind of world to set it in and a plot. And we essentially, after watching 8 seasons of Game of Thrones and running out of things we wanted to watch,
decided we had to write a book.
Decided we should probably write a book instead.
That's right. I understand that. I think I did the same thing with Line of Duty. I watched all the seasons of Line of Duty. Then I thought, what? But and Emily's saying, love the writing couple. I agree with you. But there must have been a moment where, or was there, when Paul, if you said it's now time to write this, and Collette, you said, sure, or did you say, I don't know? Or talk a little bit about when a kind of audacious idea to write a novel becomes reality, and it's not just you, it's two people.
Well, I think what's interesting is that we've always done them in kind of two voices, and we start off writing,
voices.
Those voices. And I think there was just a little bit where I think I don't know if you have it in the States. Do you have that game called Consequences when you're a kid, where someone writes down one sentence, you don't see what the other person's written?
You flap it over. Sure.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how it started. So you did that. You had that voice of the influencer that came to you for our first book.
So it's an influencer mum and her husband, and
so
a sort of unnamed third voice, which is a stalker, and they have a terrible plan which they plan to enact.
So you wrote the first chapter, didn't you? And then we didn't really know where it was going, and then I wrote the second one.
And
we
it
thought,
unfolded like that.
quite works. Okay, we want to see where this goes next.
And that's often what we do with our books. So they're quite voice led, and we will have an idea for a plot, but usually we'll then quite quickly start to write probably 10,000-20,000 words, so we can get an idea of who those characters are, what they might do, what their voices sound like, and then often we'll put that down. And we'll do a much more detailed plot. We always work to an extremely detailed chapter plan.
Well, we have to, because there's 2 of us.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So 10,000 words-ish of stuff, and then make an elaborate chapter plan. I mean, I always think that, the voices come through so gorgeously. If you just joined us, and I'm so glad to see all of you. Here's Katie and Vicky and London, and Shannon is here, and Deborah is here, and says, interesting how people write together. Absolutely. And you've done it so nicely. I always think that a character is developed by thinking about what they want and how far they'll go to get that thing. Do you know when do you agree? Or what is it that makes your characters evolve?
So I think that's definitely true. And we have that in mind quite early on, but it's then the obstacles that we put in their way to sort of stop them getting those things probably does develop as we write or as we plot.
Yeah. I think that's such a nice way of putting it. I think as we write also, some of the characters, right from the start, this is what they want, and they're so driven. And then some of the characters kind of come into focus what they want.
And reveal themselves.
Don't they? And they sort of become a bit worse or a bit better than we originally conceived them. Or
they do something, and this is one of the things that you do so gorgeously in your book. Again, I want to hold it up again in the final act of Juliette Willoughby. Some of the things that happen in your book are the motivations for them, the decisions that the characters make are completely understandable, but you can feel that they're really wondering how they ever got to such a position, how they would ever have to decide to do this. And it's very exciting to read. Are those kinds of character elements fun to write? Do you know? So you know them when you get there.
Absolutely, and always those sorts of things are incremental, aren't they? They make a strange decision, and then maybe they make a slightly worse decision, and then to try and right maybe that wrong, they make a worse decision, and you never start. Well, I don't think we certainly have with this one. There's not a single terrible act. It's sort of it gets dialed up over time until they're in a right pickle.
Well put, because it's what the decision that a character makes reveals their personality, reveals their psychology, reveals their underlying needs, and who they really are. And it's so very exciting to read. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but let me tell you all, welcome all of you. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, welcome, welcome, welcome. You have picked a terrific day to join us. We are talking about the final act of Juliette Willoughby by the couple who is Ellery Lloyd. If you are a veteran of Crime Time, I love that you're still here. It is amazing. We have been doing this for 4 years now and going strong. A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic by the powerhouse duo of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us discovering new books, to keep us discovering new authors, to keep us talking about writing and being in the writing world and creating a community of readers and writers. And we have persevered, and we are so happy that you are all here today. Let me tell you a little bit about our authors for today. Ellery Lloyd is the pseudonym. We should find out how you chose that. Is the pseudonym for the London-based husband and wife writing team of Collette Lyons and Paul Vlitos, as I told you. Collette is a journalist and editor, the former content director of Elle UK, that's so cool, and editorial director at Soho House. She has written for The Guardian, The Telegraph, and The Sunday Times. Paul is the author of 2 previous novels, Welcome to the Working Week and Every Day is Like Sunday. He is the professor of creative writing at the University of Greenwich. They are also the authors of People Like Her and The Club, both of which I bet you've read. Okay, tell me, where did you come up with Ellery Lloyd?
I wish it had a more romantic genesis, but actually we were told that short that short surnames and long first names work well together
in our genre.
In our genre, I think it's more common now, but at the time that we wrote our debut, we were told that 2 names on a cover makes it look like non-fiction. So it was decided that that wasn't a great idea, and so we just Ellery was a long first name that we could find that was kind
of unisex. And there's Ellery Queen as well, who's a the kind of crime writer who's pseudonym that was used by lots of people. So that seems really suitable.
And Lloyd sounded nice.
Yeah.
I love that. I think you should make up a bigger story about that. Isn't it interesting, the edicts that people say, oh, 2 names, that sounds like nonfiction. And we're like, well, okay, well, I won't do that.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I remember also someone was asking in the chat about whether we ever had creative differences with the novels. We didn't, but then I remember my pseudonym names were quite flowery. I was like sort of, we should be called like Evelyn Darkbloom or something. Something was very obviously like sort of a pseudonym.
Yes, they got squashed quite quickly.
When you write fantasy romance, you can be
exactly.
That would be great.
Paul's romantasy subgenre.
Medium or something like that. That sounds lovely. That sounds great. So welcome. As I said, Vicki Gregory is now here, and Shannon Hansen and Renee is here. Robin Stahl and Catherine Holland is here. And Catherine Holland says, thanks for the chance to enter to win. Yes, Catherine, thank you for reminding me. We are giving away, well, we're not. Paul and Collette are giving away a copy of the final act of Juliette Willoughby to 1 lucky commenter. So all you have to do is leave a question or a comment before the end of the show. So you have about 35 more minutes. And then, we'll spin the wheel of fun, which we love. And we will choose at random, let the wheel of fun choose who will win the final act of Juliette Willoughby. I don't want to cover up your name. And the rest of you, of course, are going to run and get your copy of this novel because you will love it. So without further ado, although the ado is great, tell us a little bit about this book. I'm always nervous to describe a novel, so I just let you do it. Can you do that for us?
Yes.
Let's hope so.
It is a mystery set over the course of a century in
3 different timelines.
Which focuses on a forgotten female painter called Juliette Willoughby and her lost masterpiece, which holds the clues to a deep, dark family secret.
So she dies with her partner, who's another artist, Oscar, in a fire in Paris in the 1930s, and her painting is lost. So we have one strand that's about her life with the sort of surrealist artists in Paris in the 30s.
And she's run away from her controlling British aristocrat family. And we know there's a secret there, but we don't quite know what it is.
And then we meet 2 students who are kind of falling in love in Cambridge, British Cambridge, UK, in the 1990s, and they're art history students, and they find some clues. They find her diary, and they find some clues suggesting that the painting may have survived, and that may be, and that's where it sort of emerges that there may be more to the fire and her death than sort of meets the eye. And then we jump forward to the present day,
to Dubai in the present day, where Patrick, one of the students, is now an art dealer, and he has been accused of the brutal murder of his oldest friend, who is the only surviving member of the Willoughby dynasty, Juliette's family. And the painting, which he owns, has just sold for £42 million. And so we're unpacking what's happened there and how the painting might be linked.
So there's sort of 3 timelines, 3 mysteries linked by a painting.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. 3 timelines, 3 mysteries linked by a painting. And the idea that there's a missing masterpiece by an unknown and almost forgotten and shouldn't have been forgotten female painter, a surrealist painter that may or may not exist in present day. How did it get there, and who found it, and what's going to happen, and what is the story behind it? Because it's more than just a painting. We're talking about the final act of Juliette Willoughby. Does this not sound good? I dare you not to buy this book. It is absolutely irresistible. What was the beginning of the book? What was the first domino that fell?
you wanted to do something about art, didn't you?
I wanted to do something about women artists, and I'm obsessed with the female surrealists. They're completely fascinating. So Juliette is fictional, but we situate it in the 30s in Paris, and we did a lot of research around who was there at the time, and she exhibits her masterpiece self-portrait as Sphinx for one night only at the 1938 International Surrealist Exhibition in Paris, which is a real exhibition, which is extraordinary. Do read about what they actually did. Dali had his amazing rainy taxi, which was parked outside the gallery, which had mannequins in it covered in live snails that was raining from the ceiling. There were coal sacks suspended from the ceiling inside, which were raining coal dust on the kind of 10,000 visitors.
So we always wanted to write that. We always wanted some scene that was set at that, didn't we?
Yeah, because it was an extraordinary evening. But all of the painters in the surrealist movement that you might have heard of, Magritte, Dali, Picasso, Man Ray, exhibited that night, and
our fictional characters,
and the women that perhaps you may not have heard of, although sort of a lot of work has been done to make sure people have heard about them. So we felt that was a really rich kind of era to set, or to kind of situate our heroine, Juliette.
And then you're sort of passionate about the way they've been forgotten as well, isn't it? We wanted to make that kind of central to the story and thinking about that.
Well, let's talk about that forgotten women in art. This is one of the segments that in the novel, one of the segments that someone talks about says, this is how we get painted out of history, she says. And it's so powerful because it makes the reader think about all of the women artists who, had they been men, would have been held in completely different esteem than they are now, and how art historians of today, contemporary art historians, are discovering these people, and they shouldn't have to be discovered. They should have already been in the public eye. Can you tell me how when you started thinking about that and how passionate you are about that?
I did an art history degree and wrote my dissertation on the female surrealists, so quite a long time. And we spent quite a lot of time, because these women are exhibited now. So there's a beautiful piece called Little Hermit Sphinx, which is by an artist called Lenore Feeney, which is in the Tate Modern. In London, and that was, I think, that kind of sparked the idea for the painting and the novel, and our kind of fictional artist Juliette. So yeah, and her trajectory, it's very hard. We can't really talk about it too much without giving very much away, but her trajectory was always quite crystal clear to us. So you start with her running away from her. She's a very talented artist, and she's at the Slade, which is an art school in London, and she meets Oscar at his exhibition, who is a German artist living in Paris and is part of the Surrealist Circle. He is also invented, and they have this coup de foudre, and they run away to Paris together, and she lives with him, and you meet them basically a year later when it's all slightly curdled, and Oscar's getting more frustrated, and war is looming, and she's getting the attention. Yes. Yeah. Which he doesn't like very much. Talk a little bit about, I love how, again, in the essence of this is a murder mystery, you should know several of them. But I love how you've set this incredibly cinematic milieu of now and in 1990s and early on with Juliette. We can really see their apartment and see these paintings. Her painting is, I could close my eyes and completely see it. You've brought it to life so gorgeously. And now I totally forgot what I was going to ask you about in the midst of that. But what was it like then for you, who both of you understand that world, that art world of the time, to take these two fictional people and sort of insert them in that world and make sure that it still all fit? What was that fun? Yeah, it was. We read around it a lot. I'm looking at our bookshelves, which are sort of stacked haphazardly with lots and lots of biographies of people like Dorothea Tanning and Lenore Carrington,
and books about Paris in the 30s.
We bought lots of guidebooks from the 1930s in English that were bought by tourists at the time. You know, you can pick up for a couple of pounds on eBay, and so it kind of described where you would eat and what it would cost, and you know, and so that was quite lovely to do.
That was the first time we've done like a historical strand in a murder mystery, so that was kind of quite an exciting new thing to try and see if it would work.
And we went to Paris, so we all went to Paris on a trip with our 6-year-old daughter, who was determined to see the Mona Lisa for some reason. So yes.
Speaking of your daughter wanting to see the Mona Lisa, and this is so peripheral, but Collette, do you remember what painting you saw early on that made you love the surrealists, the female surrealists?
There's an extraordinary painting called Birthday by Dorothea Tanning, which is amazing, and the early paintings of Lenore Carrington. There's one, I don't think I'll be able to find it. But yeah, Lenore Carrington and Lenore Feeney were the two kind of artists that I kept returning to.
Oh, marvelous. I know that Margaret will put those in the comments and we can all look into those later. It's so interesting. I remember being in love with Franz Marc's painting. And I remember just having seen them, you know, a faux, but I remember seeing them in books and in the Skira art books. And then my dad took me to a museum and said, just walk through that door. And there was Deer in the Forest, my favorite painting. And I just burst into tears. I just burst into tears. So I know how art can be so incredibly powerful. And you really bring that to life in this novel. So many other elements of the world come to life in this novel as well. The sort of secret societies of British universities and the houses and the rituals and the Egyptology. Talk a little bit about that part of the book. It's equally fun.
Yeah. So the surrealist artist Juliette Willoughby, her father is a sort of he was a collector of Egyptology. From the sort of in the early 20th century. So she's grown up in this house full of all these kind of sarcophagi and
scrolls,
mummies and, you know, in that kind of terrible way that, you know, lots of kind of British aristocrats did go around the world and kind of collect all these treasures and, you know, really rob them. But that sort of feeds into her art. So again, that adds another layer of the mystery, like what's all this kind of Egyptian stuff that she's obviously grown up around? Does that also have a hidden meaning in this painting that makes sense?
And actually the surrealists use that kind of mythology as well in their painting, so it all kind of feeds in. And the Secret Society in Cambridge, so we both went to Cambridge, and there was
in a secret society. Well, I don't know if you're in a secret society.
Yeah.
But there is one called the Pit Club, which has got a building in central Cambridge, which it looks like kind of a Greek temple from the outside. It's actually got a Pizza Express in it now on the ground floor, and the wood panelled rooms on the top floor of the society. But so that we kind of played on that with the kind of Egyptian theme of the Secret Society in Cambridge, which Juliette's father, who went to Cambridge, was founded, and there's a collection in there. So we played around with that as well, which was really good fun.
But we're taken into the occult and to rituals, and that sort of feeling sort of hovers over the entire novel. I mean, your Kirkus starred review called it a beautiful puzzle box of a novel, something like that, something very enthusiastic. And that intricacy of the book is very cleverly done. The structure, too, with the 3 timelines is gorgeous and so seamlessly understandable. How difficult must that have been to put that together?
It was quite difficult.
Yes.
But luckily, I mean, that is your great brilliant, one of your great brilliant skills as a writer, isn't it? The logistical planning. And we had post-it notes in 3 different colors for the 3 different timelines, and moving everything around and just working on it, I think, as 2 people, to make sure that it's not confusing, and each bit leads you into the next bit. You kind of keep going, hopefully not having to hold too much in your head at one time.
That was it. We were happy for it. We wanted it to be complex, a kind of puzzle box. We didn't want it to be confusing, so it all had to flow. And honestly, we tried several ways of plaiting those strands together, and in successive drafts. And the one we alighted on, we think and hope, and the feedback we've had is that it is kind of it's not confusing for the reader, but it did take quite a lot of plaiting and replaiting.
We knew the strands and the characters. We just had to try and make them fit together in a way that,
I mean, I think one of the things that works so well, and again, we're talking about the final act of Juliette Willoughby, the title of which you will understand, and we won't even talk about it because it's brilliantly described, figured out. One of the things you do so brilliantly is that when you're writing a mystery novel and there are secrets, the secrets have to be revealed at the proper time to be revealed. And you want the reader not to feel confused. You want it to be suspenseful without confusion. And that has to do with the release of information, with timing. Is that what you were working on?
Yeah, it is. Exactly. And also when you've got multiple plot strands, which this does, the reveals have to come in the right order, in the right timeline. And that did take quite a lot of juggling as well.
And I'm sure that, you've had this as well with your writing, that you want the reader and the characters to be focused on one thing at a time. I always hate that when they're like, oh, there's lots of things to worry about, but there's no time to worry about that now. Such a kind of, such a horrible clunky change of gear, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
You're just ordering things so that you never have that kind of, they're worrying at two things at once. And
that's so wise, because you're completely manipulating your readers, but it doesn't feel like that at all. I mean, your beautiful sleight of hand of drawing the readers through the story and balancing then, now, and before works perfectly. We find out what we need to find out when we need to find it out. And yet, everybody has a secret, even the authors.
That's a good way of putting it.
Who knows? So part of it takes place chillingly in Dubai.
Yes.
Which you described so gorgeously. Who knows about Dubai? Or did you go to see it?
So I lived there for a couple of years, about 15 years ago. So we did actually have to go back because it has changed quite a lot since I lived there. But yes, that was definitely written from personal experience. I mean, not that I've been into a Dubai jail, I hasten to add, which is where one of the characters ends up. But we did actually speak to a couple of people who had spent stints in a Dubai jail. Spoiler alert: it's not much fun. So yes, we definitely were able to kind of understand that from the inside, but.
Well, yeah, also how the criminal justice system works and what actually happens when you're arrested.
But in the end, in the essence of this book is about passion and love and art and loyalty and friendship, and how art can change our lives in so many ways. When you finished, I mean, I just felt. First of all, I thought, oh, that's really a good story, And second, I thought, I am different now from reading this because you have really created that feeling of how important art is or should be in our lives, and can be so either beautiful or destructive in other people's lives. Is that something you want? How do you want people to feel at the end?
Honestly, I think one of the things that I would absolutely love is for people to come away from this book thinking, oh, I didn't know any of that about those female artists that were involved in that movement. Maybe I'll look into them a little bit more. Maybe you know, maybe I'll look at their work. That for me would be, I'd absolutely love it if people felt like they'd come away not just having absorbed a story, but, you know, some information about women I think are amazing.
And also, I think because their work's less familiar than, you know,
so lots of Dali's melting
lots
clocks,
of the male surrealist painters, you think, oh, so you're seeing it like fresh, almost fresh for the first time. It retains that strange, like what on earth am I looking at? Who came up with this? You know, because it's got that like real impact still. And
it's actually the first time we've ever written a love story into one of our novels. So yeah, we did lots of things we haven't done before. We haven't done kind of historical. We didn't do a love story, and so I guess you know, I'd like people to kind of walk away from the novel feeling kind of warm about it as well.
Yes, and that definitely happens. It definitely happens. There are several love stories, for better or for worse, throughout, and characters who we think we know, who we don't. And there are lots of wonderful reveals in this. Someone was saying, and it went away quickly, Sharon Bishop said, "I love how you complement each other as a couple as well as writers. Looking forward to reading this more." So in working together, and we were talking about this earlier, and then I'm going to open this up for questions. So I know all of you have questions for Paul and Collette. What did you, and I don't mean to be pushy about this or personal, but working together, what did that, I mean, you're so, I'm going to finish a sentence, I promise. You're so genuinely respectful and admiring of each other. Did that grow even more in writing?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the first thing people say, you know, when we tell them we write together is, what, and you're still married? But actually, we feel incredibly lucky to be able to do what we can, you know, it's an extraordinary privilege to be able to work together on something creative.
And it's lovely as a writer as well, knowing that who your first reader is going to be. So when you come up with a good line, or you come up with like a way of doing something, or even like in the early stages, like a shock, you know, right, oh, she's going to read that. And you're sort of almost waiting, and the other person's reading it at the other end of the house, you know, and you're just waiting for that. What have you done? Or like,
yay. That's great. That's great. And you're honest with each other, though, aren't you? I mean, if something really doesn't work,
we just edit each. So Paul and I write different characters in the first one or two drafts, because they're all sort of all of our books have got at least two voices, and we'll take our respective voices. But then we both edit everything, and we do it in Google Docs. So we can see when the other one, but we're not precious about it. We're both used to being edited. We're both used to editing other people, and so we are the only time that and I wouldn't ever even say we disagree, but at the plotting stage we probably have slightly more heated debates,
because that's like what is the tone of this book gonna be, what kind of book is it? That's where you're sort of wrestling a bit, or wrestling, and then I see that you are right, and in fact you've thought it through much more fully.
But actually, you know, if one of us really disagrees with it, it's not going to work anyway, because, you know, if one of us disagrees with the plot point, we can't make the book work. So we've got to kind of
the other thing is, I think because we're married and because we respect each other, we can be a lot ruder in our comments than you would ever be. Like you could never say to a student, "This is really boring."
Yes, but it's. I mean, I guess in the end, you need to walk through the door together, and you can examine a lot of doors along the way and discuss them. But Robin says, "Smart man." He decides to agree. Oh, we won't tell about that. We won't tell about that. It's a lovely thought, and it makes reading this book even be sweeter to imagine the two of you writing this together. So congratulations on this marvelous book. I have one more question. I forgive me, but did you study the structure of mysteries? Did you? I mean, you're a professor, Paul. You're a teacher, and you teach creative writing. So is this something that comes naturally to you? Once upon a time, there was a thing. Something happened.
No, again, I think we've got complementary skills, because Collette always says about my early novels that I wrote alone that I forgot to put plots in.
You forgot to put murders in, yeah.
But they always have, like, I'm quite good at, like, structure, like thinking, oh, this would work if you could tell a story in 2 voices. But then it's the actual kind of plot and the kind of the
weaving things together.
That's your thing.
Yeah, that's my Spidey skills, isn't
and
it?
You can see you're still weaving on it, like, oh, we can connect this. There can be another connection.
That's my happy place.
I love that too.
So my kind of, my brain's left little Easter eggs as we write, and then that's why I did that.
Because that's the best part. Forgive me, yeah. I agree with you. That is the best part when you think that's why she did that.
Exactly right.
And it's the best. And how does that even work? I
don't know.
Well, I will leave that to all of you wonderful readers to figure out when and where that happened in the final act of Juliette Willoughby. Highly, highly, highly wonderful book. Highly, highly, highly recommended. Let's take some questions from the audience. Love this cover. I know this word. I love this cover. How was it designed? It's hard to tell what it even is. So talk a little bit about it if you can.
So it is a photograph taken by a Julia Carcosa, and it's actually the same. It was the UK team that came across the photo. Our UK publisher, and we're lucky enough that it's been used in the UK and the US. There was, they did. It's a process, a cover design. So that we looked into maybe having something that was a bit like self-portrait, a Sphinx, the portrait. But then I think that would have been difficult because we wanted people to build a picture of that in their own mind rather than be shown it. So yeah, this just felt atmospheric and gorgeous without being too literal.
It does give. What do you think, Paul? Do you agree?
Yeah, completely. No, I was just thinking because when I brought this in to show my students, I'm like, this is the cover, and we were talking about how a cover gets decided, and one of them just went, oh wow, is that your wife?
No, that's not me lying on the stairs. No,
that's not something.
Oh, but I mean,
we just have taken a picture.
Well, I'll never not think about it. Thank you, Steve. I'll never not think about it. That makes sense to me now. Who else?
They found the photo, didn't they? They didn't commission it.
They didn't commission it.
It was just a photo they found. They thought, okay, that kind of
resonates. Was it contemporary or is it a vintage photo?
It's contemporary, actually. So yeah, it's from a set by a photographer, and they found that one, which I think was brilliant.
It's kind of loose and voluptuous. Yeah. I love it. Deborah Frost, hey Deborah, says, how do you celebrate your book launches?
Well, we haven't yet been to the US for our US launch. So that was 2 weeks before our UK launch. But what did we do? What did we celebrate?
First book, it was the middle of the pandemic.
It was.
So then we had a second book launch, and then we had a little book launch for this one in a
brilliant shop called Goldsborough, which if anyone's ever in London and is a crime fiction lover, it's wonderful.
Oh, if you love books and you come to London, that's it. It's a whole street of map shops. It's got first edition bookshops, a kind of little narrow street. It's got an occult bookshop and a pub at the end of it. Yeah. And we had some white wine in that bookshop.
Yes, it's
and what street is that?
Oh gosh, I
can't
remember. It's near kind of Leicester Square.
Now I'm pushing you for geography. Yeah. That's a very high level of difficulty. Let's take one more question or two. Who else has a question? I know I've seen many of them. Brenda says, oh, here we go. Was there any, Catherine, what a good question. Was there any interesting research you couldn't use?
Ooh. My favorite fact, and I don't think it did go into the book. I kept trying to shoehorn it in, and I just couldn't do it. So, I mean, it's horrifying, but it's also fascinating. There was a paint color called Mummy Brown
in
Victorian Britain, and actually was used up until the kind of 20s and early 30s, which was made from ground up mummies.
So apparently there were so many mummies in Egypt, just kind of lying around, that they would grind them up and make paint. And I don't mean paint for an oil painting, paint you would paint your living room with.
Yes. It was
Bizarre.
yes, it was like an ochre kind of color.
I imagine.
Apparently, like there's still a London paint shop that's got sort of an arm that they never got around to grinding up.
But also, why would that occur to anyone?
I mean, talk about vintage color. Ugh.
Yeah.
I can see how that fun fact might not get.
I tried to get it in and I couldn't.
Now it's sounding like someone's horrible name too. Coming to our stage. Who else? One last question. I see so many questions. How long did this novel take you to write, says Renee?
About 18 months.
Oh, and so does it.
It's usually a year, but this one was a bit longer.
A bit more complicated.
And is there a moment where you think, what is the moment where you think, oh, we're finished, this is good? What is that moment?
The day before the deadline.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you. But still, I mean, of course, that's the time you have to hit send. But at some point in the novel, and it's happened to me at least, and I know it's happened to you, there's a time where all of the threads, all the people are going to where they should go, and all the people are going to be where they're supposed to be for reasonable reasons. And you kind of think, oh, this could work. Talk about that moment of realization after that year and a half of writing.
Yes, I was going to say there's definitely that moment, because there is a little bit where you're just sort of, particularly the two of you, are going, is this a book? Is this going to work? And yeah, there's just something. It's an idea, isn't it? And you'll just be talking in the evening, and someone was asking about whether we tend to talk about it quite a lot, actually. And then occasionally because sometimes you just have these frustrating moments where it doesn't come. There'll be a couple of ideas that come together and you think, right, that pulls it.
Yeah,
that's it.
And it, like, we're at that stage, so we're working on our next one now, and we are at that really exciting stage of like, oh, that's knitting to that, that's working with that. It's that kind of and then there's kind of stages after that, obviously, where you're like, oh, hang on, maybe.
And you can see how all the dominoes are going to fall.
Yes. Yeah. Everything happens because of something else, and it all makes sense. And there's not that one bit of contrived moment, like as Paul was discussing, when no time to think about that.
Yeah,
just when everything touches each other and the causation is there, and it's so nice. So you must promise to come back when your next book comes out.
Absolutely. This has been a joy.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to my mailbox right now to wait for your next manuscript. I cannot wait to read this. Before I let you go, two things. Let's do the giveaway. Let's spin the wheel of fun and see who is the lucky winner who's going to win the final act of Juliette Willoughby. Somebody very, very, very lucky. And that is Catherine Olson. Oh, that's so wonderful. Catherine, that's great. Catherine is a loyal fan.
I hope you enjoy it.
We hope you enjoy.
And you will enjoy it, Catherine. And you will get an email telling you where to email me. And I will email Ellery's publicist, who will get you your book. And that's how publishing works. So that'll all work. And congratulations to you. The rest of you, run, click, click, click. You know what to do. Do not miss the final act of Juliette Willoughby. You will absolutely love it. And it will send you rushing to Google to look up artists. I promise you it will. Before I let you go, Robin Stull says, yes, please come back. Susie Baldwin says, thank you all for this great conversation. Thank you for coming. Before I let you go, let me tell you a little bit about who's going to be here next week. Next week, we are double booked. And Crime Time is the only place that's a good thing, to be double booked. At 3:00, we will have, what did I do with the book? At 3:00, we will have Chris Whitaker.
Oh, Chris.
Who you will note is on the cover of this book. Chris is beyond a genius. This book is one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And I just interviewed him on Saturday near Boston in person, and it was fantastic. Do not miss All the Colors of the Dark. And will not want to miss the story behind this novel. So that's 3 p.m. ET. I'm getting the ring light out of the book. 3 p.m. ET on next Tuesday. Then at 4, you will not believe we are having my dear friend and incredibly good writer, the rock star Hannah Mary McKinnon, yay Hannah, who has written a rock star of a novel about a rock group and who killed the main singers of the Bittersweet. What happened to the Bittersweet? Oops, my bookmark is falling out. What happened to the Bittersweet? Only One Survives by Hannah Mary McKinnon. And she will be here at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. So such a big day, just like today was a big day with the final act of Juliette Willoughby by Ellery Lloyd. Thank you so much for coming, you two. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. What a great conversation. Thank you.
It was. I enjoyed it too. Thank you. And thank you for joining us from London. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We have absolutely loved being with you. We will see you next Tuesday at 3 p.m. ET, a special time. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time.